global perspective to the Cayman community.
Welcome to Money Sense. I am your host, Amy Hubble, and well, it's Halloween, and it's a holiday all about kind of celebrating the dead, right? So I thought we would kind of keep on theme and invite some of our friends from STEP, which is the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, right? And I think it's good to talk about some of the things that we all need to kind of do before we all pass into the afterlife. So in studio live today, we have Emma Santiago, Anthony Partridge, Greg Haddow, and Thea Maitland. Welcome, guys.
Good morning, Amy. Thank you for having us.
Morning, Amy.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Emma, start us off. What is STEP, and what does it represent, both on a global standpoint as well as here in the Cayman Islands on a local scale?
Well, STEP, we're a pretty cool club. So we are a global professional body. There's 110 branches. It's made up of lawyers, trustees, accountants, sometimes investment managers.
Right.
The STEP branch was formed back in 1997. We have about over 300 members here in Cayman. And we've got 20 people on council. And within the council, we also have subcommittees that meet regularly. So we've got a legislative committee, a regulatory committee, a next gen committee. Two of our wonderful members are here with us today. We've got our conference committee and a scholarship committee. And what STEP does locally is we've held these monthly lectures. They're educational seminars. You've been,
of course,
an attendee. Thank you for contributing to that. And it's a great chance for everyone to hear what's happening, have a good education seminar, at the same time network with their peers and colleagues in the room. So we try to host that on a monthly basis.
Yeah, so 300 members, pretty large organization for an online island industry. And I feel like we often talk about the Cayman Islands as being, you know, the hedge fund center of the world. But the trust industry, right? And I know the trust industry, like you said, includes, you know, a lot of different pieces that may overlap with some of the other pieces. But how many, I guess, people do you think that kind of at least contribute in some way? Maybe they're not full STEP members, but are touching this industry in the Cayman Islands.
So we actually had a talk about that and wondered how many jobs are impacted. And it's really difficult to say because, as I said, there's lawyers, there's accountants, there's trustees. There's such a broad amount of people. So I don't know that we could put a number on it. But definitely being part of the STEP community gives you access to everybody in the business.
Right. Well, how do you become a member of STEP?
I think that's over to me. And first of all, thank you again, Amy, for having us all in today. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And so STEP, as we said, it's the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners. And this is a worldwide, global body and the leading body for trusts and estate practitioners throughout the world. And it's something that we talk to our members about all the time. What does membership offer? It's an international professional recognition. The TEP designation is something that employers look for, not only in Cayman, but globally. It's also something that clients look for when they're seeking to engage lawyers, trustees, accountants. There's opportunities for career advancement, and it gives credibility to its members. Access to technical resources and publications, something very, very important from a learning perspective for our members. Networking with global practitioners. So there's a lot of networking opportunities really throughout the globe with STEP. We've talked about, or we're going to talk about our conference that's held here in Cayman, but there are STEP events and conferences all over the world. We've all just been in Miami for the STEP conference.
Right.
There's a lot of people from Cayman that's traveling to Asia next week for the STEP Asia conference. And they're just a couple of examples of the STEP network that happens globally.
Yeah, I saw one of those pictures from Miami. It looked like maybe the Cayman contingency was maybe the entire conference. Was that true?
Well, yes, there was a terrific contingent from Cayman. We had somewhere between 40 and 50 members, and I should say very much supported by Cayman Finance, which was one of the major sponsors of the STEP Miami conference, which was fantastic. But joining STEP, that was another one of your questions. So there is definitely different routes to becoming a STEP member. There's the STEP diploma. that you can do, which is actively supported by STEP and supported by employers as well. There's an essay route as well that's available through STEP Learning, and there's also the experienced practitioner route as well.
Can I just chip in on
Of
the
course,
actual diplomas? Yeah. I remember doing the diplomas, and I did it 15 years ago. And I remember my first daughter was born, and it was manageable whilst working. So one thing for the audience to understand: STEP is totally manageable while you have a full-time job. And as to Anthony's point, all of the employers support it. It's something in the industry that your employer should support.
And we're about to hear from Thea and Greg, and both of them are graduates of STEP diplomas that they've done. Thea here in Cayman, and Greg through his previous jurisdiction.
I did one of the exams here, just to be
Oh,
clear.
you did? Okay, yes, right.
There's 4 exams. I did 3 of them not on this island, and then I did the final one on this island. So,
right.
So again, the one thing to mention is it's also mega flexible. So you can start here, you can go elsewhere, and finish the diploma. So it is, great course.
Why would you want to go elsewhere?
Great question. Well, I did the last one here, right? Now I'm still here.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I think you touch on the key issue there, and it is obviously the networking, the career opportunities.
Yes.
And I know that last year you guys launched a huge initiative for next-gen practitioners, which I know how you define next-gen is in your heart, but as we can all attest around this table. But yeah, talk to me a little bit about that, just because I really think that careers in trust, careers in estate planning, it is such an industry that is so much more, let's say, interesting than auditors. Sorry, auditors, if you're watching. But this is an industry that is so interesting because it touches so close to wealth management and people and feelings and just some really interesting work. And so I really am excited about this next gen initiative. So tell us about it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Amy. So we officially launched in March of 2024. And since then, the initiative has really taken off, and it's been such a great success. One of the main purposes is to inform and to educate the up-and-coming generation, or even those that want to pivot from their current career into the trust industry. And it's, educating them about all of the opportunities and roles that are available in the trust industry. So, as everyone's rightly said, legal advisors, investment managers, accountants, trustees, you name it. And growing up here in Cayman and learning about the financial services industry, and even while I was in law school, I don't think there was much emphasis on the importance of the trust industry and how vital it is here in Cayman. And so I think it is our job and our duty to educate and inform and mentor the up-and-coming generation and letting them know, how important the trust industry is and all of the opportunities that are available.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think a lot of the students that are coming through, they just see finance as this kind of big umbrella kind of sector, and then maybe within that they might be aware of banking, offshore banking, funds, and all those different other areas. But trust is kind of one of the ones that's at the back of their thoughts, really. And so our job is basically just to kind of promote the area that we operate in and make them aware of what we do and what's available to them. And we've been doing that in lots of different ways. So I was at Cayman Prep not that long ago at their careers fair with some of my colleagues from the Next Gen Committee, where we just sat there with all the other employers on the island and just kind of educated the children, let them know about a scholarship that we have in the Next Gen, for STEP. So STEP sponsors students every year to take all the exams that we were talking about. And so kind of making them aware that money is available if they want it and if they want to kind of use that to get into the industry. So there's a lot of exciting things that we've got planned for this year coming. So we're going to do seminars on a quarterly basis, but the seminars are going to be focused more on kind of skills for juniors, rather than we're not going to invite juniors to come in and listen to some really high level intellectual debate on a very niche area of trust law. because that would just be boring for them to listen to. But we're going to get them in. Yeah. Anthony's not going to be speaking, but we're going to invite them in, and we're going to kind of run little seminars about how we network. How do you get into networking? What are the skills for networking? Because that's a really daunting thing for a lot of people who are starting off in a profession. No one really teaches that soft skill.
Yeah, that's
so.
true.
So yeah, there's a number of things. So seminars, and we're going to do socials as well, because that's kind of part of it, just to get them to mix with everyone who's in the industry, so they can see who's who and figure out kind of which direction they want to go with it.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I'll say for myself too, when I graduated from college, I mean, just finance is such a big umbrella, and especially living in the Cayman Islands, all you hear is funds. I mean, or accounting or be a lawyer, but what does that really mean? And then there's so many little specialties within each of this. And I mean, I was lucky. My first job was in a trust company, but I had never even heard of a trust company in my life, and I had to first day Wikipedia what a trust is, and so I think it's something that we really do need to be pushing, because we need up and coming employees, jobs in the industry. Right? There's a big hole that's kind of being sucked away. Right?
Yeah, and I think there's a real private wealth boom at the moment as well. So we do need people trying to fill those positions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, good. Well, I know, pivoting back to kind of not that Next Gen is another branch of STEP, but it almost seems like it's becoming that, because it's been so well received. You've only been launched for a year, but you do have a conference of overall Cayman Islands STEP too. Tell us about that.
So that's coming up on January 22nd and 23rd. It's at the Hotel Indigo. And if you register before November 28th, there's a discount. So I encourage everybody, get registered. You're going to have over 300 attendees. Really international people we had over 17 countries last year. Is that right?
Yeah, we did. And I think, over the years, this conference has just got bigger and bigger. And one of the things that we're most proud about as the STEP Cayman Islands Council is that for the very first time this year in 2025, the conference was completely sold out.
Right.
And Emma and I were completely hounded by people, international people, local people, just begging to try to get a spot.
So again, we encourage you,
you gotta
please
sign up today.
register.
Yeah, as soon as possible to avoid disappointment.
Yeah, just go on to our stepcayman.com website, and you can get the registration link through there. And it's also a good website to go to find all about what Step Cayman is doing and all the Next Gen events that are happening and all the STEP lectures that are happening. It's a great source of information.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any kind of early registration discounts?
Yes, there's a discount if you register before November 28th. You get a whopping $150 off, but that does go a long way.
Absolutely it does.
Yep, completely.
Well, very good. Well, from the first half, now we've learned about STEP, but in the second half, we're going to pivot and talk about kind of what our own estate planning might look like, and maybe some of the tips and maybe some of the things to avoid right after our break.
This is how we wake you up in the morning. Praise time on Radio Cayman.
Stairs, 'cause I know my Jesus answers all my prayers.
Praise time.
Weekday mornings from 6 until 6:30.
Praise time.
There's nothing to go back to. Give me Jesus in the morning. For the God of the mountain is still God in the
Praise time. Praise time.
Jesus in the morning, yeah.
Weekday mornings from 6 until 6:30.
This is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community. Brought to you by the CFA Society Cayman Islands.
And now, more Money Sense.
All right, welcome back to Money Sense. Now, before the break, we talked about how important and influential the trust and estate industry is to Cayman. But now let's pivot. Thea, nobody likes to talk about their own death, right? But how important is it that we start talking about it?
Oh, Amy, it's such a significant topic. And like you said, you don't want to think about it. You don't want to talk about it. But, preparing a Cayman Islands will, for example, is an essential tool in your future planning. It alleviates stress during what's going to be a very difficult time, as well as ensures that you provide for your family members and your assets are protected. Just a couple of reasons of why everyone should turn their minds to preparing a Cayman Islands will. So firstly, under Cayman Islands law, we have what's called freedom of testamentary disposition. And what that essentially means is that you can... It's a lawyer in me, sorry.
Freedom of testamentary disposition.
What that essentially means is that you can leave your assets to whomever you please in whatever proportions. And if you die without leaving a will, and the legal term for that is intestate, there are some very hard and fast rules within our succession regime. And they're quite arbitrary, and they'll specify who actually then benefits from your estate. And so what this could mean is that a distant relative, for example, that you have no relationship with, could actually inherit from your estate, and that cannot be a desired outcome. Secondly, you can choose who you wish to administer your estate. So to have a valid will, you have to appoint what's called an executor. That person will have the responsibility of calling in your assets, paying any debts and liabilities, and then distributing your net estates to those named in your will. The executor will also have to apply for what's called a grant of probate. And of course, legal advisors can help with that process. But that just proves that the will is valid, and it also gives the executor the authority to administer your estate.
And that's usually your closest relative, maybe your child, or but it could be a professional too, right?
Absolutely. So it could be, usually we see people appointing their spouses or other family members, trusted friends and advisors. They can be on island, off jurisdiction, and we have professional trust companies like Bridgestream, for example, that provide executor services. So it's a vital consideration. It's a very important role, and it's one that we have to give a lot of thought to.
I have a confession. I only did my will 2 years ago.
Oh, dear.
And I'm in the industry.
Do you know
This
who
is
the
a safe
worst?
space.
The worst people I've seen in terms of getting a will done are actually lawyers,
Agreed.
like private wealth lawyers.
Yeah.
Because I guess you deal with it every day, and so sometimes they're kind of a bit complacent themselves and just.
Well, some lawyers try to do their own wills.
Or that,
Yes,
that's,
that's
yeah.
bad.
Very bad.
Yeah,
Yes.
but if they're not, and that's only bad if they're not wills lawyers.
Well, that's.
But
I didn't want to say that
that's
out
true.
loud, but it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
We'll
there's-
talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, I think there's about maybe like 7 or 8 of us at Walkers within our team, and I think probably only about 2 have wills. So that just goes to show, no one really wants to think about it. Another important point is, especially if you have minor children, you want to ensure that you can appoint a guardian under the terms of your will. And what we would prepare that would be read in conjunction with your will is what's called a letter of wishes, which will just detail, your beliefs and your wishes of how you want your children raised.
Yeah, very helpful.
So if you have particular educational institutions that you have as preferences or religious beliefs, that sort of thing. And then most importantly, you can change your mind at any time. Once you have capacity and once you're alive, you can change your will as many times as you would like. It's quite a simple process, quite cost effective. And, rule of thumb is about probably to review it every 5 years or so.
Yeah. So what about, and because we're such an international jurisdiction, you write a will here, but maybe you have something somewhere else. What happens then?
Well, we're going to want to make sure that what we advise is that obviously as Cayman Islands attorneys, we deal with a Cayman Islands will that only covers those assets here. And you're going to want to take advice in every single jurisdiction that you have assets to make sure that you have wills that will devolve those assets in those jurisdictions.
So you need a will everywhere. Good to know. Good to know. All right. Well, for those of listeners who do not have a will, and it sounds like maybe there's a lot of listeners out there that do not have a will, where should they go? Where can they get a resource in terms of getting the right attorney to draft a will? Because, getting the wrong type of attorney to draft a will is often, I know, an error as well. But what resources or where should they start if they're like, okay, I hear Money Sense this morning and it reminded me tomorrow's Halloween. We got to talk about our demise during trick or treating. All this candy might kill us.
Yeah.
where do we go?
Oh, some shameless plugs here. So you can come to me at Walker's, or you can reach out to Anthony or Greg at Ogier, and we would be pleased to assist. But I'm sure all law firms on Ireland, would typically provide this service. And so if you have a contact or you know someone that you can reach out to, please do so that you can get your affairs in order.
Right.
I think the message really is just take some positive action.
Absolutely.
Because it's better to have a will than not have one. I think that's the message as step practitioners that we would want to give to everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I know STEP is trust and estate practitioners. So, remember, I didn't know what a trust was. Emma didn't know what a trust was. What is a trust? Does everybody need a trust? Do we need a trust and a will?
It's a great question. So a trust, I guess, at its core, in its simplest form, is an arrangement where you have property. So I may have, some shares in my own name, and I give those shares to someone else like Thea, who's going to act as my trustee, and she'll hold those shares for my benefit if I'm a beneficiary of the trust. So that's kind of like a trust in a nutshell. It's an arrangement between trustee, beneficiary, and there's a person called a settlor, who's the person who puts the money in to the trust arrangement. Does everyone need a trust? That's a great question. I guess the simple answer is no, not everyone needs a trust. We always say to individuals that come to us that are looking to set up a trust that there's a balance that needs to be struck, because running a trust with a professional trustee is quite an expensive operation, or it can be at least, depending on how transactional the trust will be. So there's going to be a fee that's going to be charged by a professional trustee. And what you really want is you want your trust fund to grow and to benefit future generations. Part of the point of having a trust is that it can provide succession to family members off into the future, long after you've kind of passed on. So having high fees will erode kind of the value of the trust, and you'll end up in a position where you'll have a diminishing trust rather than a growing trust. So you've always got to take that into account. So I guess it's quite crass in some ways, because clients come to us and say, we've got X amount of money, and sometimes we have to have that conversation with them saying, actually, for you, great, we'll get you a will, we can potentially do some other structuring, but it's probably a bit like prohibitively expensive for you to have a trust. And if they really wanted, legally, there's no reason why they couldn't have a trust, but it's just being practical with,
with the cost,
what's necessary in terms of cost. Yeah. There are lots of benefits having a trust. So if it's right for you, then it can be great in terms of succession planning. So you can be very prescriptive as to how you want assets to devolve to family members in the future. We've had change in our law recently, where the Perpetuities Act's been amended so that now trusts can live indefinitely. Effectively, that's the simplest way to describe it, I suppose. So it can be really a true dynastic kind of vehicle to provide for multiple generations of your family. It's great for asset protection as well, because I kind of spoke a little bit about kind of what a trust is in its core principles. If I have money, if I've made a good amount of money and I want to protect that from potential creditors, I could set up a trust, and I could put those assets with the trustee. The trustee then holds the legal title to those assets, not me personally. So, if anyone was looking to make a claim against me, then, I wouldn't have the assets. They would be with my trustee. That's it in its simplest form. There's a lot of kind of extra to that kind of asset protection bit, but I guess that's the simplest way to describe it. And the other thing that's great about trust is that because it's out of your personal estate, and I know Thea said a lot about wills and we all need wills, but actually it kind of negates the reason to have a will, because the assets aren't in your personal estate. They're all devolved under the trust and the trust terms.
You no longer own it, so the trust can't die, right?
Exactly. So as long as one of the principles in trust, as long as a trust has stuff, has property, it can exist.
Yeah. And what kind of cool stuff, I guess, do people put in their trust? I know we live in the Cayman Islands, so people use Cayman Island Trust for multinational holdings, multinational families.
Yeah.
What kind of cool stuff have you guys seen within trusts?
I mean, I've been in the industry for a fair few years now. I mean, there's obviously like traditional kind of shares, equities, and cash and all that kind of stuff, but it does get a lot fancier than that. I've seen some really interesting artwork. So obviously like boats and jets and super yachts. Yeah, exactly. So it's one of the things that makes our area really interesting, because you're dealing with people You're dealing with people's issues, personal issues, but you also have good insight into their life, and they rely on you to give them advice. And how do I structure this? I mean, they might earn a load of money and have enough money to buy a mega yacht, and then they come up to you and they say, "Hey, Greg,
should I?
What do I? Yeah, how do I hold this thing? Do I want to put this in my own name, or can I structure it in a different way?" So it leads to some very interesting conversations.
Yeah. Well, I do also think that Hollywood kind of puts trust fund babies or kind of trusts in general like they're only for the super rich, but I think they can be very practical as well for maybe blended families or maybe families with special needs or just an asset that has a special need for professional management forever. So I really do think that trust can be more than just for the super rich, for the super yachts. But again, it is Halloween. So what is some horror stories that we've seen with trusts and wills gone wrong or wills not happened at all gone wrong?
I think this is going to come back to me, Amy.
Everyone in the room looked at you.
Everyone looked at me, and I like to think I look young and part of the next gen, but I've been to get that in there. I've been doing this. I've been doing this for more than 25 years, and I'm still constantly surprised at some of the things that can go wrong and what we see, and a lot of it comes down to people that don't have wills, or they think they have valid wills. Or they might have tried to do their will themselves, and it's just there are technical issues with the will, and it's not executed correctly.
What do you mean technical issues with the will? It's just does it name all the children, or?
Well, wills are it's a very specialized, technical, complex drafting technique. So it needs to be drafted correctly, needs to be witnessed correctly, signed correctly. So if that's not done properly, it could call into question the validity of the will. Mm-hmm. So it really needs to have professional guidance and advice when it's being prepared and being drafted. We can't really stress that enough, I think. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I think is very, very important. I present a lot on wills, and one of the things that constantly surprises people is that marriage revokes a will. So if you've put a lot of effort and energy into preparing and drafting your will, and then you get married, and you don't make a new will, that will is pretty much null and void. And you really should be making a new will anyway to take into consideration your new husband or wife. But that seems to surprise a lot of people.
So no matter what, if you had drafted a will before you were married, that will is no longer valid.
Yes, yeah. In Cayman, that's completely true.
Very interesting.
Incapacity is another big one, which I'll also talk about a little bit. But personal incapacity, that can be in an individual sense or in relation to trustees. I mean, we still do see personal trustees in the Cayman Islands, although they're becoming rarer these days because we have such a fantastic professional trustee body here in the Cayman Islands. Digital assets is another very, very big one, because obviously we all have digital assets, passwords, Apple passwords, that sort of thing. We saw an instance recently where somebody passed away unexpectedly and no one knew what that person's passwords were to any of their digital assets, including their Apple password, with very, very tragic and disastrous consequences. So, I mean, these are all issues that I think we see that are coming up more and more often. The multi-jurisdictional planning as well is a very, very big one. So Thea touched on that and described beautifully wills and multi-jurisdictional planning, but that is something that definitely needs to be taken into context, particularly here in Cayman.
Yeah. And Greg, before you mentioned that there's something with Apple that you can kind of...
So there's a way in which you can nominate someone through your Apple account to basically manage your affairs, should you pass away. So it's something that Apple don't really shout about. But if you did a quick Google and looked it up, I can't remember the exact terminology they use right now, but there's definitely kind of a nominee after you pass that will then have access to your Apple account. So there's, families obviously would end up losing photos and all sorts of different things if they didn't have access to those accounts. So you'll be surprised that a lot of digital platforms now do have that kind of ability to nominate someone should you pass to access your passwords and your account.
Yeah, good idea. And then what if it doesn't match your will? What if you have elder abuse? There's so many other topics that I think swirl around trust and estate plannings. But unfortunately, as is always the case, we have run out of time. So thank you all so much for being here and joining this important conversation. On behalf of CFA Society Cayman Islands, I want to remind our listeners that registration is now open for the 11th Annual Cayman Investment Forum, which will be held at the Kimpton on November 13th. This year's topic is WTF, a world in turmoil and flux. It's always a great event, so to learn more, go register at www.caymaninvestmentforum.com. And with that, we'll say goodbye for now and look forward to joining you again in 2 weeks' time.